Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're going to talk about something I think fairly special.
Super special.
The $1 million stretch goal on Veiled Fate was Quackalope doing and producing a lore book, a compendium, a whole collection of narrative stories from this world, right? Ivy Studios had provided us with insane production, amazing little bits of flavor and hints towards what this world might be, a very compelling introduction, albeit needed some expansion, and a lot of really rich artwork, characters, and game design, but they didn't have a lot of story. There wasn't depth underneath the shallows that I like so much. And one of the biggest things I requested when we were covering the prototype back about 2 years ago was I wanted to understand what was happening. When I read a card like Death from Above and resolve it, or when I play with a character like we have Apony here, I want to know who they are, where they come from, and why they're positioning themselves to be the ruler. Why are the gods invested in this story? We're not going to go into detail about exactly what Veiled Fate is and how it plays. We've got plenty of other videos walking you through that. This is for the audience of people that have received the email around the Veiled Fate PDF, or who are picking up the Veiled Fate game themselves now that it's now arriving to people, and want to get their hands on this. So, Quackalope was the group that was responsible for producing this. And I started out by biting off way more than I could handle. Like, just way more than I could handle. And I spent some time with a historian. We worked together quite well and set up lore and framework and struggled through some of the principal concepts. How do we make something that is mechanically integratable? How do we make something that develops all the different pieces of lore I wanted? And then also the biggest thing that I had handed Devin, and we'll get to him in just a second, the biggest thing that I handed you, in my mind, was some degree of an answer to where could depth be for all of these characters? Like, if this world existed, why does a city exist here? What are the regions that are built around it? What are some of the answers that we've struggled with? And I handed you a jumble of mess. Right?
That's an accurate way of describing it.
A jumble of mess. Some good ideas there. Some good ideas there.
Of course there were,
But a jumble of mess. And Devin, who's part of the Quackalope team, you're doing quite a lot of stuff with us and should be doing more and more going down the road, also runs his own channel called Devin Talks Tabletop.
Appreciate it.
You spent a lot of time working, developing, and filling out. This is something like 60 developed pages of flavor text, lore, and mechanical integration. Because this is a book that is like a coffee table art book, a lore compendium.
We hope a coffee
table art book, a lore compendium, and mechanically integrates into your game. And in this video, we're going to talk about where we think that works, where we think it honestly doesn't work, what to avoid if you're going to be using this, because there's ways where it would make the experience miserable, and I think some ways that will make the experience really good. And that's what this video is about. So,
do you want me to jump in?
1 second. There is the concept that this could be printed.
Yes. Now I don't want to jump in because I want to discuss this.
There is the concept that this could be printed. Right now, it has been provided to everyone, and I'll just scroll through this right now as a fully built out. I mean, artwork, flavor text. You can see
fantastic
how the pages would look. Like, so much time has gone into this. But right now it's just a digital PDF. Those of you who have Veiled Fate, either responding by this video or following the link down below to go to this PDF, let us know and let Ivy Studios know if there's enough interest and demand for, even if it was like a select order of 100 copies or something like that. Devin will sign every one. Whether or not they officially print this, I'm going to find a way to get a copy of this. Because for me, having this on the table is part of the charm. It's part of the principle of it, right? And it makes it usable in a way that I don't think scrolling through the digital PDF is as friendly. So I don't know if you have any comments on that concept, but I think other than just opening the floor for you to talk about developing this, I then want to dive into what people will find in it, and then we can maybe go into greater depth in the exploratory thing at the end.
So I'll talk a little bit of like top down in terms of how this process went. So Jesse and Aaron did the kind of initial world building and structural organization. They tried to develop the framework for how this would function alongside a game, because what we wanted was we wanted lore for Veiled Fate, but we also wanted it to be a tangible thing that people could reach for while they're playing the game, not necessarily just reading it off to the side.
And the game wasn't designed with that in mind.
It wasn't.
which was hard.
Yeah, so it was trying to create a scenario in which you could have both flavor text and an enjoyable world that fleshes out the experience, while also having something that you could actively integrate with the mechanics of what you're doing. So what we did first was I created a sense of what is this world? Why does Veiled Fate exist? And so we have an 8-page or so, I guess on here it just pops out to be about 7, 7-page prelude, which discusses all of the people that you actively use in the game are demigods, and they are trying to take a absent throne and succeed where the other demigods don't. But the players are functioning as the children of Eridan, who is the absent ruler who, abdicated his rulership, his throne, and is why the seat is vacant. And so these children, while locked out of the world, are trying to manipulate it from afar and bring their favored demigods into power. So this prelude goes into the question of who is Eridan? Why is he gone? What reasoning did he have to leave? Why did he lock his children away from the world?
Why are we playing this game?
Why are we playing this game?
Yeah.
So this prelude goes into the backdrop and the history of this land and the people that inhabit it, especially the immortals and the half-immortals and the demigods, who are all, in the thick of the plots that go on here. And then after that, you have to care about 2 other things. You have to care about the world in which these characters exist and the characters themselves. So what I did was we drafted location descriptions.
We printed some stuff out just because I don't know if digital versus physical. Here we might zoom in to read some stuff.
Yeah.
But
so we crafted descriptions of the setting. So for example, the canyons, which is one of the locations around the board, I said, the canyons scratch deeper into the crust of the world. The canyons were once a fertile river delta. The waters flooded the land and offered the inhabitants bountiful crops and a lush home. But over decades, the rivers burrowed deep into the earth, creating treacherous chasms where there were once safe waterways. Flora and fauna of all kinds dried up above, while the life-giving water trickled down far below. Towns above now lie abandoned, while a network of caves, tunnels, and small settlements burrow into the rock to keep pace with the dwindling streams of water at the bottom of the canyons. Parents tell their children stories of the fingers of Eridan that transform the land into a verdant paradise, but the dirt and dust make it nothing more than a myth. Rope bridges now crisscross the surface of the land like stitches on open wounds. Travelers use them to traverse the dangerous territory, while more adventurous types employ the services of chasm jumpers to access the more remote regions. People fear 2 things in the canyons: the streams drying up as the water disappears, and the earth cracking and all of the scars in the rock connecting until it all collapses. They pray for Eridan, they hope for salvation, but all the while, the canyons scratch deeper into the crust of the world.
And so this is the stuff that, for me, when I wanted to dive into the game farther, I wanted this. You wouldn't sit around the game table and read the prologue, or you wouldn't sit around the game table and read each region specific, but you'd flip through and you'd read one at a time and you'd get to know about this environment you're playing in, right? So everything starts tying together.
Yeah. And after we focus on the locations, then we want to know, okay, this is the world that we're in. Who are these people that we are controlling the fate of? We are not actively these demigods, but we are influencing their fate.
Now, one of the biggest things for me, and one of the compelling moral things that we had to analyze when developing this, that I handed you, and hopefully you carried it forward, because it was one of the challenges that I struggled with, was not only do we as gods, or whatever we are, want to manipulate our children to take the throne, but our children in some form have to feel entitled to the throne themselves.
Yeah.
Or at least the people around them have to be convinced that they deserve it, right? So let's swing into Agamar here.
Yeah, so Agamar actually was quite active in the game that we just finished recently. He is one of the 9 demigods, the spine of a mountain. The mountains cull all but the most resilient. And among those hardy tribes, the warriors of the peaks are held with high regard as the most unyielding in all the realm. When these warriors descend the mountains, they walk with the calm, measured steps of souls unafraid of death. Agamar is the most sacred of these fighters, a demigod with tree trunks for legs, the spine of a mountain, and the heart of a king. Agamar fears no one. His flame-bladed sword is etched with runes that boast of his victories. The wolf cloak draped across his shoulders signifies his leadership among the mountain tribes, and his horned helm burdens his head with glorious purpose. City dwellers are weak. They hide behind great walls and hunker down next to the burning hearths when the seasons turn. They do not know hardship. They do not know what it's like to hunt for their food or build shelter during a blizzard. The mountains blow away the chaff and burn off the fat. Agamar is ready to show the realm the ferocity of his people and the power of his claim to the throne. He has defied death across the realm. Each victory is another rune to bless his sword. Agamar does not rely on deceit or guile. He doesn't need to take his enemies by surprise. He wants them to see him coming. He brandishes his sword with determination and forges his fate with the indomitable power of the mountains at his back.
And so this is one of those things where when you're playing the game, you wouldn't, again, probably read this. Because you'd have to read it for all characters, because no one is announcing who their characters are. However, we also have, and we're not going to read the epilogues here on camera, because we're going to save those, but we also have epilogues for each person who might win, any of these deities who might have made it to the end. And what we found is pairing their front story with their backstory at the very end of the game is a great way to establish who they are, find out a little bit more about them, and what type of ruler they became.
Yeah.
All right? So you have
the demigods and the descriptions of them, and then after that we push into the part that could mechanically be a complement or a supplement to what you're doing while you're playing. Now, to be fair, Veiled Fate is very unique in the fact that it has a wide variety of player counts available. You can play with as little as 2 and as many as 8.
Yep.
I would say as you edge towards those higher player counts, the game is already expanding because of the nature of how many people are around the table.
Taking actions.
And these might not be the best things to integrate at that particular experience.
Here's what I would recommend. At 2 players, I think it would probably double the playing time, but I think it could be worthwhile if you love the game and you love the lore to sit down and literally do flavor text for every single thing that happens. Every quest, every settlement, every story could be a really cool experience. And we might do that on camera one day. And we'll admit, we'll be like, hey, this is not how Veiled Fate is normally played.
It's gonna take a long time.
But this is us celebrating it. Now, the other interesting thing, though, is we've broken this down into ages, into
city cards,
and into quest cards. Everything, every mechanic, thematic piece of this game,
every card that you interact with as a player can have
scripted, built-out lore. So if you're playing 3 or 4 players, maybe you don't resolve flavor text for each one of these, but maybe every time you resolve the city card or one of the event cards, that's when you pull it to the book and you make it a little bit more deep, right? And then when you get up to the higher player counts, 7 or 8, I would advocate for just not adding this book in at all, unless you love it and your group loves it. And if that's the case, do it.
For example, at the end of our game, we had a pretty unique card called Judgment, which brought in an extra quest. And so it's
and literally
right there.
How you'd find it, this is an age 3 card, and you just open up the book to Judgment. Now, the cool thing that we've done here is that you no longer need to work from this card. You're not jumping back and forth. We wanted you to be able to go to the book and stay on the page of the book for the full resolution, right? It's not like you're referencing this goes here and that goes there.
So when you're introducing the card, you've got the text of what's happening.
Whereas on the normal card here, all you have is the mechanic rules, what the card does, but no flavor.
In a rare moment of cooperation, some of the demigods opt to work together. Only one will assume the mantle of power and sit on Eridan's throne, but until the day comes, there is strength in numbers. The fate of one is a fragile thread waiting to be cut. The fate of many is a corded rope daring someone to try. So, then you have a new quest that's drawn, which is outside of the ones that happen in the main game, and everybody selects what demigod they want to work together on that quest.
And that's the rules that are on the card, which the card is referenced right here as well.
And then you resolve it. If the if you have the feathers win the vote for that, then you read the feathers text and you say
same thing with tie and scorpions. You never read all the answers. Instead, and you'll see this through the other cards as well, you have multiple pathways down and you follow those pathways as you resolve.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And so for the feather and scorpion side, each of those, because you don't know what quest you pop up, then the players don't have control over what could come out. So whether it's feathers or scorpions, the result is the fate of the demigods lies outside the control of Eridan's children, who are the players. But the tie on this allows all demis not on the quest to gain 2 renown. That is within control of the players, no matter what quest comes out. So if there is a tie, then cooperation only lasts as long as the demigods put aside their hubris and refrain from arguing with others in the cohort. But pride is a stubborn vessel for all the faults inside one's heart, and the quest is doomed before it begins. The other of the 9 laugh at their good fortune, because those who never trust are rarely betrayed by the limitations of others.
I love it. So from there, we move down to the city cards. And the city cards are going to follow a similar format in some ways.
Yeah, so in the mechanics of the game, you move forward and progress as each demigod is brought into the city. It advances 1 space and can give cards and other effects to the gods or demigods that are brought in. Obviously, though, we wanted a little bit of flavor for that. So there we go. Machinations is the one that we have here. The city spreads its tendrils of influence out to the other regions. The plots, the schemes, the machinations, it's all laid bare when the spies and the messengers return. Each person is a thread connecting to one another, a string for the puppet masters to tug. Those who know which threads to follow can affect the fate of the realm, like spiders feeling the vibrations in their webs and weaving traps for those caught in its sticky gossamer. Who has more power? Those who confront fate in the light, or those who wait and watch in the shadows? And so the reason why I had it play like that is because when you go back into the city with that particular card, you get to influence quests out on there, which I thought matched well.
Cool. So that, when you pull those cards out, read a little bit of flavor text, establish that. And I find, for myself, as a thematic player, a touch of flavor text changes the way I actually interact with the game. Now I'm returning as a spy.
Yeah.
Who's being sent back? Who's influencing cards? There's a mechanic element to it, but there's also are we going to work as a team?
Yeah.
Or are we going to not trust everyone around the table? I don't know. It's that dance that's so good. Now we get to what I would say is the most in-depth part of this.
Yeah.
And the thing that I would recommend
probably
2 to 3 players.
2 to 3 players doing.
2 really where I think this would be the best. That being said, again, if you love this game, let's talk about how you can utilize every single one of these event cards.
And also what I think is interesting is that Veiled Fate is a game about masking who you are and what you're doing. And I think at 2 and 3 players, if you get invested or seem to get invested into the narrative of the cards, then you can also further be deceptive about why you're putting stuff there.
You're like, this character feels like a spy to me.
Yeah.
They're moving in. Or,
So, for example, if we start with Break the Siege, what happens is when you complete a quest mechanically, the people that are on that quest then get a result. Once every spot has been filled, they either get a feathers or a scorpions result that gives them a particular gain of points, loss of points, or smiting. And those are the 3 things that can happen.
Once again here, this is designed to do a few things. First, you could read the establishment of the card when you play it out, when you're doing the setup. You could pass around the book if you wanted. The second thing is, as you flip and resolve, you don't read everything that's available here. You follow the pathway down, feathers and scorpions, or if it splits off in different narratives, that always follows as well.
So, if we read Break the Siege, the narrative text at the beginning is, the city holds against the invaders, but their supplies dwindle. Food is running out, water turns stagnant. The walls will hold, but the people will not. The status quo must change. The siege must be broken. And so, for example, if we take the left side, the feathers, if after isolating all of the heroes onto this quest and we resolve it, if feathers won in the votes, then you would read that the first individual here, they got a renown, so something good should happen narratively to reflect that. Siege ladders swing onto the ramparts and the battlements are near overrun, but a gallant demigod rides up the steps, battering aside attackers before leaping off their horse and tossing the ladders back to the earth. Alright, and then number 2. This demigod gets 2 renown, so their influence on the siege must be even more profound. A battering ram approaches the gate and makes it to the edge of the walls before the defending archers could bring down those carrying it. If the gate falls, the city will fall. Before the ram can buckle the reinforced gates, a disciplined demigod calls for the final stores of oil. They drench the ram with it before setting it alight. The city is safe for now. And then we have another individual that joins the fray, but they lose a point, so either they must be in failure or in shame. Scouting the outside perimeter of the siege forces, a demigod is captured. They are faster than any other mortal, but even the 9 tire, and men on horseback ride down the demigod before chaining them up in their camp. So they were captured.
And then the last one has been smited, and smited means you're basically murdered.
You get sent to the abyss. It is a grave consequence. The defenders on the city walls stage an all-out assault on the encampment as the attackers sleep. The gambit pays off and the enemy is routed. Among the prisoners is a fearsome demigod who slew many during the conflict. They are sent to the abyss. So, what this was is this individual was actually on the side of the attackers of the siege, and the defenders broke out and captured them, and then they're punished accordingly.
Cool. And then the other side of the card, if you happen to have resolved Scorpion, has the same flow of flavor text, but it's in the same narrative principle.
Yeah.
It's just got different consequences.
Yeah, so it would reflect the lack of anything happening, the loss of renown, the gain of a lot of renown, or the gain of some.
So that's how all these cards are broken down, and when there's character specific or when they split in
into
interesting
classes
ways,
and stuff like that.
The text does the same. So moving down from this position, and this is where...
And you have that for all 36 of the quests.
Yeah, and honestly, again, you could integrate this into a 2-player game. I think it would work really well. A 3-player game if you really love narrative and story, or this is just a storybook as well. It gives you little snippets into the world of Eridan, into the world of this city, right?
And also, another thing is, this is not necessarily a lore compendium that is to be consumed all or nothing. If the quests are going to elongate your game too much, but you're at 3 or 4 and you still want to integrate stuff, you can read out the age cards and the city cards as like kind of small intermission moments in the story.
You'd only have 3 of them throughout the course of the game.
Yeah.
Or if you just have one card that you think sounds crazy, you can be like, all right,
what's the story
I gotta
behind
know
this?
what this one is.
And so these are we won't read these out, but these are the epilogues for each of the 9 heroes, which kind of gives a sense of a closure for their narrative that begins in the epilogue. And I agree with Jesse. I like how we did it in the game that we just recently played, where Jesse won as Namari, and so we gave context for this demigod that he had been controlling quite skillfully throughout most of the game. Where did he come from? What was his purpose? And then also, in a moment of triumph, how did he take the next step?
Yeah, you touch back, and the interesting thing for me about this is it closes the circuit of a game that is about the middle of a conflict. Like, for me, there was always a bit of a lack of resolution. And if this is all that you add, I think this part adds a significant touch.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the game, it was always just, oh, cool, that blob of green becomes the ruler.
Well, so at the end of the game, you won, which was exciting in its own right from a mechanical and a gameplay perspective. But then we finished with the story, and like it was a nice touch. It was a nice ending moment.
Who's the person that just took the throne? Who did I aid on their way? Right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot. There's so much depth and different combinations here of just the pairings that could win and the cycles and narratives that you could go through. So yeah, that's the premise. That's what this whole journey's been. If you're excited about that and you wanted to actually print it out, I think we all should harass Ivy Studios.
Yeah, annoy the crap out of them to do a print run, because I'm with you. I want to jump in on it.
Any other things you want to mention? Anything you want to talk about in terms of development of this, or?
No, I mean, it was just, I'm very grateful to both you and Ivy Studios that I had the opportunity to do this. It was one of the most enjoyable, creative writing experiences I had. And I think it, like you said, I think it is a special way
I think you did a good job
to integrate a lot of narrative into a game. And I think it teaches you that, like, even if you have a game that doesn't have a lot of narrative backdrop to it, it can be enhanced or complemented by crafting that, and I think it was really special.
And my hope, my selfish hope, is that this sets the foundation for not only Quackalope to be able to do more integrations and more work like this, with you of course being the cornerstone of that. But also, you're doing other things not a part of Quackalope when it comes to writing and lore development and storytelling. It's part of the branching stuff that you enjoy doing in this space. And so I hope this leads to either Quackalope getting opportunities to like do more lore compendiums, fill out games, like
which would be cool.
You know, which would be awesome. Be stretch goals on campaigns, right? Or vice versa, just having Devin Norris show up on you know, rule books and flavor text. Like, I kind of want to be. I would love for Quackalope in like 10 years to be the flavor text. Like, who's the guy that always does the rules?
Gaming rules?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? Do you remember?
Oh, why did you put me on the spot?
I know. I'm blanking on it, but there's a YouTube content creator that does some of the best
Greg?
rule books in the space. I don't think so. He does some of the best rule books in the space, and I'd love Quackalope to be known for some of the best lore writing and like world development and just stitching the pieces together.
No,
because it's
really
the thing
cool.
that I love about board games.
Yeah.
Even if I'm terrible at getting it all done myself. But now I have Devin to help out.
I can help.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Let us know if you're excited. I mean, if you've watched to this point, you're part of this, right? You're part of the Ivy Studios fan club. You're part of the community that supported this game and are thrilled to have more stuff coming out and being given to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're excited we got a chance to do this. We can't wait for more opportunities. And now that they've got an entire world built out for this, I think we start on the Veiled Fate RPG next.
Veiled Fate RPG?
Just saying, Ivy Studios.
Maybe.
Let's get on it. Bye.